Coming up on Messenger, today we reflect on a powerful message from Scripture. The story of Lot reminds us of the value of peace and the importance of reconciliation. We'll meet Rebecca Mello. She shares how simple meals have opened the door to deep connections in Muskoka. Then we hear from Pat Cove. She shares how God's peace carried her through grief and loss. You won't want to miss this heartfelt episode. Hello and welcome to Messenger. I'm Adriana. Thank you for joining us today. Today we explored the message Abraham gave to Lot. Genesis 13 verse 8 says, "Let there be no quarrel between you and me, for we are relatives." Abraham chose peace. He valued people over property. That's what we're talking about today, the power of peace, the beauty of reconciliation. We'll hear from people who are creating that kind of peace. One meal, one moment, one memory at a time. Rebecca, welcome to Messenger. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us about the inspiration behind the Muskoka Supper Club? What motivated you to start this gathering?
So I used to host brunches when I was in university, and then when I graduated and came back home, I didn't know anyone because our family had moved. And so I wanted to continue doing like social and food events. That's something I really like to do. And so I just started doing these gatherings, posting it online, and I got a lot of feedback, and it's just been growing since then.
Wonderful. How has bringing strangers together for a meal impacted the community? What have been some memorable moments?
I think now it's been like a year and a half of me doing these events, and it's becoming more and more well known in the community. A lot more people know about the Supper Club. You can walk down the street and meet some people in shops and they've heard about it. So it's really growing. But I think what's been memorable for me is just the more that you do it, the more you see there's a lot of people that are in the same situation. Like they want to meet new people, they just don't know how. And they just need somebody to facilitate that opportunity. And you can grow friendships, relationships, and the community is just growing with people that are also just trying to make new connections. And I would say one of the most memorable events is we've started a tradition at Christmas time. We do like a Christmas concert, and then we can share the Christmas story with the community. And so I'd say that's like one of the memorable things, because not only is the community growing, we're making new friends, but we can also use this opportunity to share what we know.
How do you see these community meals as a way to outreach and connect with people on a deeper level?
I believe that we're all social beings and we were made to be in community. And the more you build relationships, you can have conversations with people, and these people are seeking encouragement, hope, purpose. And so by spending more time with them and making relationships with them, then you have the opportunity to share something that's actually going to benefit their life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You also organize events that connect young professionals in Muskoka. What inspired you to focus on this group?
So again, like when I graduated and moved back to Muskoka, I was entering the workforce. I was going to start my career, and I didn't know many young professionals where I live. It's like a small town. So I knew that there was going to be a lot of other ones, and I just thought, how can I connect these people? So initially I started doing young professional networking events in Toronto, but then I just focused on where I live, like the region where I'm at. And again, like when I would promote these events, a lot of young adults would come out with that same desire to just meet other young people in the area. So I just did it so I could meet new professional connections when I came back.
That's wonderful. Yeah. How do these events help foster meaningful connections among young professionals?
The thing about the young professional events is that the idea is to connect people outside of your outside of your sector. So it's not just industry specific. So you can meet people that are in different industries, that studied in different places, that come from different places. And I think there's just something that you can learn from everyone outside of just your specific industry that you work in. So yeah, we just make connections like outside of that, and you can learn from everybody, create new relationships, and obviously friendship is at the core of it.
That's great. Can you share a bit about your approach to creating spaces where people feel welcome and open to connecting?
I think just conversation. Like, I think there's a huge desire for community in person, like talking to real people in real time, having real conversations, especially after the pandemic. I think there's a growing dependence on social media and just virtual relationships, but nothing can replace like a real human connection, a real human interaction. And so just creating that space where you unite people that have that same desire to connect with people on a personal level and in real life, then other people get connected to people that also have the desire to just have a conversation with people without any screens.
That's so uplifting. How would you encourage others who may want to start similar outreach efforts in their own communities?
So like I mentioned, I think there's a huge need for it. And a lot of people are in the same situation that you're in, just trying to meet new people, but they don't know how. Everyone's always waiting for somebody to do something. Mm-hmm. And so it's on us to take those opportunities and to go seek that out. Not only, I think, for a social benefit or just for fun, just to have a good time, but as Christians, we just remember that we have like a bigger purpose, and we can give these people something meaningful by creating relationships with them. So the advice I would give to somebody is, wherever you are, there's a need to connect people. And as Christians, we should just take advantage of those opportunities so that we can seek those people out ourselves and reach out to them.
Yes. Do you have any upcoming events or new ideas in the works that you're excited about?
So what we've started doing is group travel. So we hiked up a volcano in Guatemala 2 months ago. And so now it's just taking it outside of the dining table, I guess, and just doing a couple more days, like camping, traveling. So that's something that we're looking forward to. There's like backcountry camping that we're looking forward to in the summertime. And then in the winter, we're going to go to Antarctica. So it's just like group travel. Yeah, that's the idea now. So obviously I'm continuing with the meals, like it's usually a monthly event, but now just doing like trips is the next thing.
You're expanding.
Yes, I am. And there's people that want to do it. So the encouraging thing is like the more things you do, people show up to that. And then that just encourages me to keep going, because I'm like, oh, there's other people that want to do this too.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that fuels me.
So how can people connect with you if they want to participate in your events?
Well, we're on social media if you want to, like Facebook or Instagram at Muskoka Supper Club. Okay. That's where all the information is. Muskoka YP also is the social media handle for the young professionals. Yeah, and come out to Muskoka and come out to an event or come on a trip. Anyone is welcome. And the thing is also, like for the young professionals, it's not really just limited to young people. Like it's for everyone, because everyone wants to connect. Everyone has that desire. So we just open it for anyone that just wants to meet new people and have a good time.
Rebecca, thank you. Your story reminds us that peace often begins with invitation, with hospitality, with a heart that's open to others. Thank you again, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Peace isn't just something we create with others. It's something we need deep inside. Sometimes that peace is tested, especially when we face loss, grief, or long seasons of caregiving. Pat Cove knows that journey well. She walked through it with her husband, George. And in the middle of that pain, she found something unshakable: God's presence. Let's hear her story. Pat, thank you for being here. Your story touches the deep places of loss and love. Can you start by sharing a little about who George was and what made him such an important part of your life?
All right. George was one of twins, identical twins, born in Nova Scotia in 1939. He came to Ontario to join his father in electrical business in 1956. We were married in 1958. And he worked hard. He became a construction electrician in 1962. We had 5 children. We live on the land that I grew up on, and we built our home together. He farmed in between when he wasn't here, I did the farming, but he farmed, and at one point he had 150 sheep, some goats, cows, and horses. I had 25 colonies of honeybees. But what really was the thing that George loved more than anything was sailing. He bought his first boat in 1989, and we sailed in the St. Lawrence River, in Lake Ontario, in the Bay of Fundy, and also in the Bella Coola River, which is part of the Pacific Ocean, over the years that we sailed. He became a Christian in 1980 at Easter time. Pastor Wally baptized him. I had been praying for 16 years before he joined the church. And at times I was ready to give up, but the Lord took care of it. And at just the right time, once he became a Christian, he was very involved in the church. He was a head deacon. He worked on the building committees and whatever else physical kinds of things that were going on. He even preached 1 or 2 sermons, but that wasn't his specialty. What he really liked doing was making the physical plant look very nice. And so life went on for us. In 1989, I took a call to go to Alberta to teach. And we talked about it and we decided, yes, we'd do it. So in 1992, we came to Alberta. I was vice principal at Mamawe-Ataskatan School for 2 years, and then I went to Sedgwick School. In both places, he was very involved with the school buses, and Sedgwick, he worked on the farm with the Anderson men. Loved it there. And then we came from there. We took a call to New Brunswick, to Perth Andover, and we were there for 6 years. And again, he got very involved in the community. He was very involved in the church, in the physical plant, head deacon and that sort of job. And he went from there. We were involved in a community choir, 2 or 3 different presentations that the 2 of us did. From there, we went to Bella Coola, British Columbia, down in the valley, to what was the oldest school in Canada. And I was principal and only teacher of a 1-room school, and he got his sailboat in the ocean, and we sailed up the Bella Coola River almost into the Pacific and sailed with the dolphins. He loved it there. He was also very involved with the local public school board. Whenever they needed electrical work done, they called him to come and go with them. They flew him out in airplanes to different places to put in plugs, and he supervised a young fellow that was doing his apprenticeship. All kinds of things like that. That was his specialty. Well, then we retired from there and moved back home to Ontario, and suddenly he started having urinary problems. And what happened as a result of that, several biopsies later, they discovered a cancer cell. And I suppose you might say that was the beginning of the end. He didn't give up. He never gave up until just months before he died. But every year there were more and more blood work tests, and 9 years ago he had prostate surgery, and they removed some other things as well. But it didn't stop the cancer growing. So the surgeon came to me after that surgery, and he said, we give him 5 to 7 weeks. That was 9 years ago. And that was when I did my crying. But I'm the sort of person that pulls up the bootstraps and gets going, and I did everything I could to do to try and help him to get along well in spite of it. So he lived almost 9 full years from the time which was much longer than they expected he would do. But during that time, he went through, there were CAT scans, bone scans, trips to the doctor, new needles, new treatments. Finally, they gave him either chemo or radiation. So he chose chemotherapy. He had 3 full rounds, which was 6 or 7 treatments each round. And after the 3rd round of chemo, the doctor told him, "We're stopping because I'm causing unnecessary suffering." And that was in January of 2024 that he had that, was told that this is it. But he still wasn't ready to just give up. He was bound and determined he was going to get well. And that sort of went on for a couple of months. But by the 1st of March of 2024, he wasn't ready to keep on pushing and fighting anymore to stay alive. So gradually he stopped eating, he stopped drinking. The last 3 weeks of his life, he spent in a hospital bed in our recreation room. He wanted to die at home. And there was a series of needles, injections, and he couldn't read anymore. He couldn't hardly hear anymore. I guess he heard me. Maybe I was the last voice he really heard a lot. I did our worship talks together, and I think through the early years, once he became a Christian, he was so happy to be a Christian. Life was just not the hard time it had been for him before. And I remember the big thing was he had a hard time with tithing. And we prayed a lot about it. How was he going to deal with that? He was worried this one spring because he needed a lot of hay to feed all these 100 and some sheep for the winter. And Sunday morning about 8 o'clock, there was a knock on our door. And here it was a man down the road, and he said, "George, I had the feeling that you could use some extra hay." So we got 2 great big hay fields for the picking, and that was enough to do it. And that convinced George. He faithfully tithed right till he died. That was the last tithe envelope. He said, "I can't even write my name anymore. Put my name on this because it's God's money." And that was something that was irrevocable to him. He was all in. Once he became something, there was nothing that would stop him. And I think for me, the hard things was keeping my courage up and not giving in to feeling desperate about the situation, because we never were rich, except in the fact that when you serve God, you never have to worry about those things, because just when you need it, God provides the necessary money or place or whatever you need. So over the years, we had 3 sailboats actually. One is still in the barn. His last winter that he was able to do anything, he worked on that boat all winter. It's still not complete, and it still sits and waits. I don't know if another captain will come along and finish it or not, but he loved his Bayfield. And we spent I guess maybe for 5 summers, we lived on that sailboat on the St. Lawrence. When I was working in another province, we brought all my schoolwork home, and I sat in the cockpit every morning and worked at schoolwork. And in the afternoon, our big dog Patchy and I went swimming, or he would take us and we'd be sailing. We sailed back and forth on the river. We camped up on Main Duck Island in the Lake Ontario. And then when we were in BC, we went to a place called Yukon Bay and sat in their natural hot tubs, and we did so many neat adventures. One particular day we were at a spot, and I wanted to go ashore, and he said, "Well, we can't go very long. There's bear sign here." He paid really good attention to weather and to the animals around, and so we went ashore, and Patchy, our big wolf dog, went walking with us, and we came back, and we just got in the dinghy to head back out to the sailboat because it was anchored out from the shore. And he said, "Look," and we looked sideways, and here's a grizzly bear right on the edge of the shore. Patchy was ready to jump out of the dinghy and go after it. Well, that would have been bad news, but it didn't work because we got back on the sailboat and got out to where it was safe for us to be, and the grizzly got disappointed. So that's just one of many, many adventures that we had. Sailing was a thing we both loved so much, and it never stopped being there. But I'll tell you, if I weren't a Christian, I would not have been able to survive those 9 years, to be upbeat and to give him the courage he needed to manage with what was going on, because this kind of illness, cancer, just eats you away from the inside until eventually you're just a shell. As he gradually lost all the things that were so important to him, it was just hard to watch. We'd sit, we talked. The thing that really helped, and I don't know how many people realize it, is that long before anything ever happened, before we even knew that he had a disease that was going to kill him, we had put everything in place. We bought our funeral plot. We took care of what we wanted done when one or the other of us died, so that the one that was left wouldn't have to worry. And if I gave advice to anybody, I would tell them, make sure you put those things in place when you're both able to do it. Don't wait till you're on the deathbed and then try to put things in order. It just doesn't make sense.
How has this experience shaped your understanding of God's presence during times of suffering?
Well, I automatically turned to God, and that's what helped me through the whole thing. When I'd see him in such pain, and I knew he didn't want any of his family to know. His twin, they came fairly regularly to visit him, but none of them knew how really sick he was. It was a major shock when they came just a few days before he died to see the situation he was in, and all his twin could do was just sit beside the bed and hold his hand. Because they just, how did you handle this all the way through? They said. I said, well, I depend on God. And that's where people that don't know the Lord, who aren't Christian, and I don't just mean, I'm a Christian Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not just a Seventh-day Adventist. When something goes wrong, I pray my way to work in the morning. Pray for the kids I'm going to teach that day. I may never have seen them before, but I pray for them all, that I will be the kind of, because I'm teaching in public school now, and we're not allowed to talk about Christian values during our time of teaching, but I can pray for those kids that I'm teaching, and I do. I pray on my way to work. I guess really I pray my special verse, pray without ceasing. That's what keeps me grounded. It's what keeps me convinced about how I should live and what I should be doing as I go along. And so if I'm to give something to anybody else, the tougher it gets, the more you need to depend on the Lord, the more you need to get that kind of courage that no human being can give you. I've had so many people pray with me, come and pray with George, visit with him. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't sleep, who do you go to? I learned to go to God, and I learned that a long, long time ago, long before George became a Christian. I depended on the Lord to give me the courage to keep on going and to keep trusting, because I knew what was the truth. I didn't just blindly become a Seventh-day Adventist. I studied at least 4 or 5 different religions. And I read my Bible 2 or 3 times through. I went through all of the Voice of Prophecy courses, all the Faith for Today courses. This is back in the early 1960s, when I had no idea that they were affiliated with a Seventh-day Adventist church. Absolutely no idea at all. But they rang true. And at the time, the Protestant church that I went to was telling me that the first 5 books of the Bible were fairy tales. And I said, it's either the whole Bible is true or none of the Bible is true. And I opted to believe, because of my faith, that the whole Bible was true, and that is exactly where I needed to go and what I needed to do as I went along in my life. And so it kind of colored everything that I did. When never forget, I was in university, and this girl came up to me, a young girl. She said, "Pat, you're such a good Seventh-day Adventist." And I turned around and looked at her. I said, "No, I'm not such a good Seventh-day Adventist, but I love the Lord, and he directs my steps, and I won't do anything in this life on this earth that's going to discredit the Lord I love." even 5 or 6 years after university, she was still writing me, telling me her troubles and asking me to pray for her and encourage her. And I did.
What do you hope people will take away from George's story? And how does it inspire you to keep going, even after such a significant loss?
There's more than just love. You have to like people. And I often thought, even if George and I were angry at each other, we worked well together. We built the house that I'm still living in. We built the barns. We had lots of help, mind you, but we were the leaders and the builders. And even if I did mix cement the wrong way 4 or 5 times and he wasn't patient about it, I just kept on mixing it till I got it right. And I guess that's how we managed to be together for 66 years. Because you have to get past your own petty ideas and work for the good of the whole organization. We had 5 wonderful children whom I still, in fact, one of them just worked to get this computer going so that I could be on this with you today. I would have given up long before because I'm not a computer tech person. But he stuck with it and got us going. And I'm just so thankful for my children, all of them, because every one of them adds a quality to my life that would be missing. And I like to think that the good qualities of their father and the good qualities of me are built into their systems so that they can deal with life as they go along, because it's not easy and it gets harder and harder every day. The last few days of politics convince me that we're very close to the Lord's coming, and we need to pay attention to the important things.
Thank you, Pat. You reminded us that peace isn't always easy, but it is always possible when we lean on God. Lot chose a land. Abraham chose peace. Today, we're still invited to make that same choice, to be peacemakers, bridge builders, people who bring others closer to Christ. If today's stories moved you, consider subscribing to the Canadian Adventist Messenger magazine. It's free through your local Seventh-day Adventist church in Canada, or subscribe yearly for $20. You can also support our ministry by becoming an agent of hope. Your gift helps us share more of God's love and message of hope. To donate, visit agentsofhope.ca. You can give by debit, credit, Apple Pay, or Google Pay. E-transfers are accepted at agentsofhope@hopetv.ca. Or mail a check to Hope Channel Canada, 1148 King Street East, Oshawa, Ontario, L1H1H8. You can also call 1-855-4HOPE-TV. That's 1-855-446-7388. Thanks for joining us. Let's choose peace. Let's welcome others. Let's keep being messengers.